Plains Cree name is Pascual Mustus Kawichimetuwe Matnatsiga-san, which means he who plays with the buffalo. I'm excited to be your host today, and a little bit more about myself is that I'm a proud member of Pipikwan First Nation located in southern Saskatchewan. I'm enrolled into the First Nations University of Canada and completing my Bachelor's of Business Administration, and currently am serving as the National Student Director for CanDo. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a returning participant, we're grateful to have you here. A little more about Canada's Youth Connect is that it is a platform to empower Indigenous youth and allies across Turtle Island to participate virtually to discuss topics such as economic development, lands management, and entrepreneurship. Some past speakers that were featured in our Youth Connects were Don Gladu and Janie Grew with Starbucks Foundation, Michelle Nivadomi, and Rihanna Mirasti. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. If you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand function or put it in the chat box, and we'll get to it at the end. Make sure to stick around to the end because we'll be doing a $100 gift card draw for those who complete the evaluation. Your feedback is crucial in shaping our future Youth Connect sessions. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Shani Gwin and let her take it from there. Shani Gwin is the founder and chief executive officer of pipikwan, patakiwan, and wasagigan kisewa. Sorry, hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad. But now she is the host of the Settle Down podcast. Shawnee is a sixth generation Métis and a member of the Cunningham clan on her mother's side and a descendant of the Michael Band and Ferguson clan on her father's side. Shawnee is a proud Métis woman with a passion for elevating Indigenous voices, projects, and successes. In her role as founder and CEO, she upholds the vision for the company, ensures her projects are accountable to the community, and ensures agency initiatives align with our values today. Today, she has built one of Turtle Island's leading Indigenous owned, led, and majority staff communications and engagement agencies, and is now creating an AI company led and informed by Indigenous people. She helps guide clients and organizations with strategic guidance on decolonization, reconciliation, artificial intelligence, issues management, and public relations. She is committed to uplifting underrepresented people, including Indigenous women, youth, and the LGBTQ2S+ community, so that they hold equal spots in society. Please join me and give me a warm welcome to Shawnee. The floor is now yours.
Thank you, Ference. Tanse, Mahagan, Oyoyo, Sosqueo, Natsiga-san. My name is Shani Gwin. I just introduced myself through my traditional name, which is Howling Wolf Woman. And I'm just going to share my screen here. Hopefully that's working now. Oh, sorry. Okay, got it all sorted out here. Okay. Um, yeah, so I am the founder and CEO of Wasigan Kisawatsuwin, which is a AI company that I just founded in 2021, and also pipikwan, which is a public relations and engagement agency. I'm located in Amiskwaciy, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, in Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis Nation. I'm a mom. I've got two kids. Quinn, she's 15. Her name isn't Quinn Gwyn, which the nurse gave me a bunch of crap when she was born. Like I shouldn't name my kid Quinn Gwyn, so she's got a different last name. And Charlie's my little guy. He's 7. And I'm married. I got a little dog, and yeah, I'm an auntie. I'm a great auntie. Got lots of roles. So that's a little bit about me. Um, this is a little bit of my family. Top left is my papa Chester Cunningham with his all of his siblings and his mom, my nanny, Maria Cunningham. And that's my dad. He's also known as Métis Santa Claus. So if you've heard of Métis Santa Claus, he gets asked to come to the Downey Wenjack Fund, and he plays Santa, gets booked a lot in the Christmas holiday season, and his name is Lloyd, and so he's busy. Bottom left are my great grandparents, St. Pierre Ferguson and Philomene Callue, on their wedding day in Gruard, Alberta. They had such a big party, they wrote it up in the Edmonton Journal. They went through 3 steers, 12 sets of fiddle strings, a bunch of sacks of potatoes, and it was a party. Went all weekend long. So I love that photo because they don't look like a bunch of partiers, but obviously they were. And then that's me when I was young at Pow Maker Powwow with my friend James. And I've always been surrounded in community, understood who I was from a young age. I was very lucky to grow up, you know, surrounded by people in all walks of life. And, my dad worked in labor skill development, market development, either through the Métis Nation or through Nietzsche. And then he also was a contractor for many years and then worked for Rupert's Land Institute. And then my mom, she worked for Native Counseling Services of Alberta for a long time. She was a warden at a jail. She was on the parole board. She was the CEO of Niganan Ventures, which is a housing organization in Edmonton. She worked a lot in addictions and incarceration, um, reconnecting our people with culture. And so, I grew up with two very strong parents who were entrepreneurial and encouraged me to also be entrepreneurial. Um, it was sort of confusing because in a lot of ways I know that they had to sort of shut up and buck up to survive their situations. My dad is so bright, but never was one to sort of speak up often. Um, And, his dad had passed when he was young, and he was the oldest of nine kids and helped his Cree mom, raise all of those kids and have a good life. And he went to a Catholic school. His teacher was a nun. Wasn't like the jolliest of childhoods, but he still always leaned into his joy and his loving nature. And I learned so much about affection and kindness through him and my cookum. And on my mom's side, my mom's always been the type to like stand up for everything. She's like, it's like what's that Miley Cyrus song? I came in like a wrecking ball. Like that's my mom. She comes in like a wrecking ball. And she's more of a masculine energy, but she doesn't take anyone's crap. And so and she had a very interesting upbringing as well, and was dropped off at a convent when she was in grade two for a couple of years, and then her dad came and picked her back up, and she didn't have to go back after that. So they did the best that they could with the tools that they had, and I'm very lucky that, they overcame a lot of their own trauma as much as they possibly could to invest in me and my sisters. And um, when I got to school, that's when I started kind of encountering this narrative of, you're not native. You don't look native. Your parents have jobs, as I got a little bit older, oh, well, maybe your cheekbones. Yeah, you kind of look native because your cheekbones, and just being denied so much of what I thought I was, and even just the stories and history that my parents and my extended family had shared with me about, you know, us being here since time immemorial, even around children being harmed and even buried on site of residential schools. Those are all things that I knew about. But when I was in school, I was denied a lot of that uh, truth, and I didn't always know how to be. I didn't know how to advocate. But I had two really strong parents who had really strong qualities that I looked to. I looked to my dad, how he could build a relationship with literally anyone. Like he could talk to anyone. He always had kindness in his heart. Um, still to this day, if someone says, "Oh, your dad's Lloyd," they're like, "He is the kindest man. I love Lloyd." And I'm like, "I know. He was the one that woke me up in the morning and brushed and braided my hair and always had a big warm hug. And then my mom, a lot of people are like, "Whoa, your mom's Corolla Cunningham? Oh my goodness, she's a feisty one." And what was it like having a warden for a mom? And yeah, like you were held accountable, like you didn't get off with anything. And so I really tried to take both of those kind of qualities of like my dad's kindness and my mom's honesty and putting those together and even making sure that other people felt seen or supported was always really important to me. And I think because of them and even like my grandparents and my extended family, um, I feel like being sort of seen as a leader through my friend groups or at school, it kind of came naturally to me because of my inclusive nature. I just always felt it was important that we did things together and as a team, and that everybody had strengths to bring um, to the table. So as I got older, I started to understand that um, there were there was so much of information in mainstream media and in my history books at school or from other people that I knew that was so misinformed and stereotypical, and I decided that I would get into public relations because I saw an opportunity to help our people with storytelling, truth telling. It is so much of our strength is telling stories. That's how we pass our knowledge on. And um I wasn't fully aware, but like as I like now I just turned 40 and I'm like I have, when as I've told people what I do for work, people are always like, "Oh, that's kind of like a made up job. It's not really you're not like saving lives, you're not it's not it's not that important." And for a long time I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm not an emergency dispatcher. That's for sure." But with everything happening in the world, I'm like, oh, I have one of the oldest jobs in the world. My job is to bring integrity and thoughtfulness, and my job is to influence people and change attitudes, hearts, minds about, you know, that's my job. And that has been happening forever. And when I was invited to a panel last year with all these misinformation experts, it was really interesting. All of these white academics were talking about how misinformation is a new epidemic, and what are we gonna do? And I thought, and then it came to me, and they said, what do you think about this misinformation epidemic and this new challenge? And I said, well, it's not new. This is something our people have been struggling with since contact. And misinformation is a tool to gain control and power. And you have to think about that when you share a story, when you share information. What is my intent? Is my intent to manipulate? Is it to gain power? Is it to get control of a situation? Is it to build bridges? Is it to help people understand? Is it to tell the truth? You know, there's always an intent behind something that we share, and there is a lot of power in both the written and spoken word. And so I realized that over the last few years that this is really what I'm doing is trying to unwind and undo thousands of years of misinformation. And why did that start? To gain power, control of our people, to assimilate us, to gain access and control of the lands and the resources that um, we are connected to and the rights holders and protectors of. So, um, when I got into this work, I never realized how, I don't know, I think I must be on the spectrum. I know I have ADHD, but justice sensitivity is a real thing for me. I have a hard time with dishonesty, and maybe that's from my warden mother beating that into my brain over the years. But I am really challenged by that, and I really am challenged by watching other people be harmed. And so I decided to turn that into a job. And when I worked at the government, I got a lot of experience. Like I was able to hop around. I worked on Uber coming to Edmonton. That was one of my big files. I worked on infill. I worked Indigenous relations. I worked on um, isolation and loneliness, mental health initiatives, like you name it. I like even pool reopening, someone poop in the pool. I was the comms person on it, like you name it. I was kind of doing whatever. But I really took that opportunity to, get my toolbox, so to speak. I wanted to fill my toolbox, and there were so many opportunities of the government to fill my toolbox. I even worked for Edmonton Fire Rescue Services, so I was on site of, you know, um, massive fires or crime scenes. When Fort McMurray was on fire, I was on the ground here supporting all of that. And and then I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I think I have all the tools now. I can go do this for what I wanted to do it for, which was to support our people. And so I started kind of, while I worked at the city, I worked off the side of my desk and I just started, I had a relationship with a couple of chiefs and they had asked me to help them with like a news release or they needed a quote for someone else's news release that they were going to do. And or they needed a statement, or they wanted to know if they get media attention for something that was happening on their nation. So I just started kind of doing these things off the side of my desk. And within a year, I was getting so busy, I was able to leave my full-time government job. And I took a risk. I would say that most of my entrepreneurial journey is about risk taking and having a lot of, I think at the beginning, it was sort of a bit reckless. Like my self-esteem wasn't probably where I needed it to be. It was sort of more of like, oh, it's an experience. Oh, I'll just see what happens. I was a single mom. I had my first when I was 24 while I was still in post-secondary. Um, she was a bit of a happy accident, but she changed a lot of things for me. It wasn't just about me being reckless and careless anymore. It was about having someone else that I was responsible for and ensuring that we were taken care of. So even though I was being still kind of reckless in what I was doing, there was still this very big sense of responsibility that I had as a single mom. Um, and over time, I realized that it wasn't just about having these sort of experiences and doing things recklessly. It was more about what was in alignment with me and my values. And when I started my company, I was just a sole proprietor. But then after 5 years, I was able to incorporate and I went through a renaming process and a rebrand, and pipikwan was born. And at that point, I was like, this isn't about me. This is about something bigger. This is about bringing other Indigenous women and gender fluid folks and elevating them, training them to do what I do because I saw that there was such an opportunity for our perspective. C coming from the government, I was the only Indigenous person out of, I think it was 80 to 90 communications people in the whole city of Edmonton. Um, and the emotional labor that came with that was intense. Anytime anything was happening with an Indigenous person, they would come knocking on my door and they would want me to handle it. It didn't matter if it was my client or not. They wanted to know what I thought. But even then, even I was giving advice, they didn't like They didn't like a lot of the advice. And so um, it was really challenging because I would have to find allies or I would have to find, as I started working with the Indigenous Relations Office, it was almost like we were like colluding to be like, okay, so this is my advice, this is what I think they should do, but I need like at least three other Indigenous people to kind of come forward and agree with me, if you agree, um, so that they will be convinced. Because as one Indigenous person with all these white people, it was really challenging. But what would happen is that when they didn't take my advice, they would have a PR problem. And then they would go be like, oh, we should have took your advice. I was like, yeah, no, I know. Um, and I think what became clear to me was that a lot of the advice, a lot of the ways that they spoke to people was from such a colonized lens, from such a white lens, that they were, I don't think it was intentional, because a lot of these people weren't part of how this system is created, but they left so many people out of their communications because they were so focused on what they knew, their own lived experience, how they feel people are going to receive a message. And so I was like, there's really this space for Indigenous, brown, Black people to bring our lived experience to storytelling, to strategic communications, to thinking about how one message will impact, have a ripple effect. I guess if you were going to think about it from seven generations thinking, it's like this one action, if the government does it, how will it impact all of these people and how will it impact all of these people? That's basically what public relations is. And when you're only looking at it from a white lens, you're only thinking of one little segment of people, and there's all of these people in Canada, right? So I started this company, it grew, and I based all my values are on Cree natural law. So I say we, but it was me, but it's hard to not say we when it's a group of people working together. A lot of the ideas, I guess, come from me, but in the end, at the beginning, but in the end, what made this successful is all of the people that have come and shared their information and their ideas and helped collaborate and build it together. And so our mission is to amplify Indigenous truths and stories across Turtle Island. But our vision is to see our people, sharing their truths as equals. That we're not, I think one of the perfect examples is when a resource extraction company will, say our land protectors are on a sacred land site and the media picks that up. And then right away you'll see from a government and a maybe Shell Canada, I don't know, whoever, will put out a release right away. And all of a sudden the narrative in the media shifts. And it's about how Indigenous people don't understand the economy and they're thugs and they're vandals and all these things. And that's deliberate. That is deliberate. So then when we are able to, so because you got to think land protectors, okay, where are they getting their funding? They don't have any funding, like we're doing that community sourcing. So then do they have skills on the ground to do to get access to the media? Likely not. So are they trying to hire a PR firm? Maybe they are. If they hire a PR firm and they're all white, they now have to educate the PR firm about why they're even doing what they're doing. And even then, the PR firm keeps getting it wrong. These are from actual stories I've heard from our people in their life. So they're spending all of their money educating the PR firm, never even getting the PR firm to actually start anything. So where we come in is we're ready to go. Tell us what you're doing. We understand the history for the most part. Maybe we don't know every little detail, but we understand the dynamic and we can get that release out for them right away. But we have such a steep hill to climb. The natural resource company starting here with their news release, and they're able to go out and the Canadians already have this false narrative of who we are. We're going up on this uphill battle. Like we're tackling the misinformation and we're trying to tell people why we're doing what we're doing. So there's this, so for us to say we want to be able to share our truths and stories as equal, it's like we want to be able to start here when we have a news release. We want to be able to have most people understand like why we're even putting this out. But we have a long way to go. And so our values are based on natural Cree law, so um, sorry, honesty, kindness, sharing, and strength or respect, depending on the elder. And at the core of that is really love. And so our values are we share our strengths, we are sustainable, we are humble, we are courageous, and we are transformational. It's transformational. And so each of these animals or and the tree represent our values. And, when we talk about sharing our strengths, like I think there's this narrative in the colonial sense in that you have to be good at everything. You have to like know how to do everything. Whereas like for us at pipikwan, it's like, I know you're going to have a natural gift. Tell me, what is it? Let's try and build on that strength. Now, where do you need to learn? And you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. But we need honesty in that. So tell me where you're really starting from, and let's work on that together. If you make a mistake, that's okay. Let me know. Be honest about the mistake, and we can work on fixing it together. And then building and learning, because like, as a parent and as a, you know, can you believe I was a kid at one point, making mistakes? That's how I learned. I mean, gosh, I made some really, really big mistakes, and I'll never make some of those mistakes again because I learned my lesson. And for my kids, like, I'm always just like, just try it, just try. I know it's scary, just try. So a lot of these they are really important to me, and they really structure the culture of our company. And I think that's really important is like, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to really base this in who you are, and your company isn't you, it's not who you are, but you have to exist in this environment every day. And so you got to feel good about waking up in the morning, putting your best foot forward, finding a way to inspire and motivate yourself because it's really hard. It's really isolating. It's really lonely. There aren't a lot of people you can talk to, and money changes people. And so at the end of the day, you have to be okay with what you're building, and you're the only one who can answer for what you're building. And you're going to be your number one salesperson because no one can talk about the company like you can. And so you have to think about how you're building your brand around your own integrity, your own values, what's important to you. And maybe it won't be important to everybody, and maybe it won't maybe not everyone will like it. That's okay. You have to like it because you have to be connected to this thing that you're creating and building. Um, it's just such a key aspect of the work. So when we put our org chart together, we were just so challenged by the hierarchical model. Like obviously, you do need a bit of a hierarchy because someone's got to make a decision. Somebody's got to be accountable. Someone's got to be responsible. But you can actually build all of that into your job descriptions, right? Like the accountability of this lands with you. You are therefore responsible. So what we did was we built a flower with seeds. And so you can see that I'm in the middle with the elder and I'm kind of my own flower. And these are our service areas. And sort of my job is to kind of shine all these petals around and say, here's our service areas. But then each person is their own seed, which is to encourage agency and autonomy. So through those root systems, through helping prepare the soil and bringing business in, my job is really to make sure that the people that work for me have a good environment to succeed in. But I don't believe in a tall poppy. I believe in a field of flowers. And so that's the idea is that everyone's going to be their own flower. And their job is to, help the seeds of the next generation. And the way we've decided to show that someone is sort of like a director is just putting like a couple more dots around them. And so those are their teams. Their color goes with the center and side of each petal. Um, and we do that so people can see how that relationship works. And it's about bringing Indigenous ways of knowing and being to that. Like we're building a community, we're not building a family. Families can get very uh, interesting, and that you can't have that at work. You can't fire your family, and you can't fire really a community member either, but it's sort of the closest thing you can get. In order to have a successful community, everybody's got to have a role, um, and everybody has to be accountable and responsible to each other. And so that's what I hope people see when they see the flower. And as a Métis woman, the flower has a lot of other significance to me in passing our knowledge and our traditions down. Um, so yeah, when I talk about leadership and what we're doing, I think a lot about distributed leadership. And so what does that mean at a company? I think why, you know, with my journey into leadership, I still feel like a little tiny baby leader. Like I get called a leader and I'm like, really? I don't know about that. I still have lots to learn. But I guess in terms of it is at the end of the day, people are looking to me for answers. They're looking to me for the vision of the company. And um I just got to a point where I was just so tired. It felt like nobody knew how to move forward without me. And so I changed my motto from I hold everything together. I think that was sort of a subconscious motto I had to I build systems that hold things together. Because it can't rely just on you. And I think that's a journey a lot of entrepreneurs go through is like you feel like you have to touch everything. You feel like it's important that you're involved in everything and that you know everything, but you have to build trust. And you need leaders that you can trust. And so when there's a distributed leadership model, that means there's accountability and responsibility across your leadership. It's not just you. And so that I feel is a way of building a decolonized or an indigenized work structure is we're all invested in moving this forward. And yeah, at the end of the day, the buck stops here. But I love the idea of distributed leadership because if you think back to traditional leadership, that's what was happening. There was not really one person in charge. There was the matriarchy of our elders and they all worked together. I think about the teaching around the eagle I received is like, sometimes the eagle's gonna soar left and then it's gonna come back and then it's gonna go right. But you always see it come back for it to coast. But sometimes it has to go this way and sometimes it has to go this way. Well, that's leadership, is like sometimes it's gonna feel like it's all on you, but then it should have balance. And then it might feel like it's all on someone else. Like even in my marriage, like there have been times where I'm like, I'm doing it all. And then next thing I know, like, oh, frick, thank goodness we're both in this. And then he's doing more. But that's life, is like there's always going to be a time where someone's going to have to pick it up. And that's okay as long as there's balance, as long as there's respect, as long as you are dedicated to doing it together. And I think when you do that, you automatically include voices for women and gender fluid folks and youth. And that's important for me too with pipikwan and wasigan is we tend to hire a lot of interns and we have an elder that we work with. And so our oldest staff member is over 70, and our youngest staff member, I think, was 18 or 19. And so to me, that's reflective of our communities too. And we have two new moms who, decided that they weren't ready to, when they were coming back to work, that they weren't quite ready for their kids to go to daycare. So we worked it out. And they work flexible schedules and their babies are at home with them. And now some of the babies are going back, they're going to daycare a couple days a week. But it's really beautiful to see these moms who, and we get to see little babies in our meetings, and we tell them to come to our retreats and stuff, and that feels more like who we are. It's not about out of sight, out of mind. It's about the reality of our communities. But at the end of the day, we are still a business. We still have to make money. We still have to do our jobs and be accountable. And so I think with leadership, something that I learned early on through therapy is that you can tell someone has good mental health by their ability to be adaptable and flexible. And I think that makes a good leader is you do not know. Like we say, I don't know if anyone knows about there's this store in the south side of Edmonton. It's called Bianca Amore's Liquidation World. So everyone goes there for their ceremony stuff for giveaway, right? But like all the cookos and stuff. But anyway, their tagline is every day is an adventure at Bianca Amore's. And so we have absorbed that tagline. Every day is an adventure at pipikwan Petiguan. Because literally some of the things that have happened, I would have never even I couldn't have even dreamed of like, and this is good and bad. Um but so you have to be adaptable, you have to be flexible, you have to be solutions oriented, you have to be willing to move forward. Um, I think there's beauty in the pain. And that goes back to being able to make the mistakes is when you're in it and it's hard and you want to give up, and it's painful. I think that's something that I've learned is I can say to myself now, this sucks and this hurts and I don't know what to do right now, but I know that this pain is a gift, from creator, from this person, from this situation because once I take the time to sort of process it, you know, get advice from whether it's the elders or a business coach or or a mentor, I'm going to be able to walk away with a new perspective and a lesson. And that's a hard one to talk yourself into and out of. But then the day comes and you're like, that wasn't so bad. And everything that feels like it's going to be the worst, um, I don't know if you become more hardened or you become more mature or you become I don't know. You get the education, I guess, from those experiences. And I think it makes the joy and the success and the fun so much more sweeter. And so I would say like part of leadership is being grateful for the hard times and the good times. And trust me, there have been a lot of hard times. Um, but you can be your own motivation and you can be your own inspiration and you can find it anywhere, in those painful moments, just going for a walk outside. It's funny what a little squirrel running across the road or even a cranky old magpie will uh, communicate to you in a moment of pain. And so I try to take those moments and remember that this is going to be brief and it's going to be beautiful when I come out of it. So that's a little bit about me and my journey. I mean, I can go into like a little bit more about my childhood and things like that, but I think at the end of the day, I think it's become part of my brand is the strawberry, and I wear a lot of strawberries. I use the strawberry emoji all the time. I just love the strawberry because the teaching that, I don't know if you find this, but like I find it doesn't matter how many times I hear a teaching, whatever point it is in my life, it starts to have a whole different meaning for me. And so as a child, my understanding of the strawberry was it's our heartberry and it, signifies love and connection and then even though I knew about the teaching around vulnerability and the seeds on the outside, I didn't really understand what that meant. But then as I got older, um, part of my ADHD is like I tend to overshare and I tend to be quite vulnerable. And then I leave a room and I'm like, ooh, why did I say that? And I feel like I don't know. I'm like walking around without my skin on or something. I'm like, I'm so sensitive now because I know I overshared. But I what I've come to see is that that is a real strength of mine is being vulnerable. And I think I learned that as a kid is that having a tough mom uh, and a quiet dad, I think that I found in order to sort of maybe get their attention in the ways that I did when they were in their hard moments was for me to be vulnerable. And sometimes I would get hurt because they weren't open to what I needed in those times. But then I could really hang on to the times that they were, and they were both beautiful parents when they weren't in their pain. And I could hang on to those moments of like unconditional love when they were in a healthy place. And I think even coming from a place of that, seeing how my parents would include so many people, like we would always have random people living with us, and I'd give up my room and things like that. And I found that there was real joy and love and um just something really special about allowing yourself to be vulnerable and finding friendships that were beyond surface. I could really get into these friendships that had very deep connections because I allowed myself to be vulnerable. And even in business, I find that I get that feedback a lot is, I love that you're successful and you're being yourself. Or I'll hear, um, wow, you really just like don't hold back. You'll say things that I wouldn't expect a lot of people to say. And it's like at the end of the day, if I want our youth to have a better experience than me, then I gotta be honest. I gotta literally lay those pillows on the floor for you. And and I'm here for you. If there's anything I could share or anything you want to ask me, even if you don't feel like you can do that today, you could reach out to me and I'm happy to share what I can. I mean, from an HR perspective, there's certain things I can't say, which drives me crazy. That is probably the hardest thing as an entrepreneur is when you have HR issues and everybody wants to know why you did a thing and you can't say because because I know a lot of people would understand if they had the context, but you can't share it. But yeah, so I do love the strawberry. I love the teaching around vulnerability. I love the teaching around love, and I think that's just a really beautiful way to walk through the world is like being a sensitive person is actually a real gift, and you just have to protect yourself a little bit more. So, and have good boundaries. That's a good one too. So, anyway, thank you. I don't know if there's time for questions or if anyone has questions, but happy to chat more.
Thank you again, Shani. Wow, very insightful. If anybody has questions, drop them in the chat or feel free to unmute your mic. Um, for me, maybe I'll go first. I would like to, I know in your introduction, you talked about how you're working on an AI company led that, I mean, an AI Indigenous led company. So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, sure. Um, Sorry, I kind of just totally didn't even talk about it. But yeah, so Wasigan Kisawatsuwin is so both companies were named in ceremony, and Wasigan Kisawatsuwin translates to kind energy or kind electricity. And I talked a little bit about that emotional labor, and so with the rise of hate online, I just was like, Indigenous people, we have our job, whatever our job is, and then we also have the job of like educating non-Indigenous people, and advocating and trying to correct misinformation. And um, after January 6th, with like the Capitol thing in the States and watching how people react to us online up until that point, it was so hypocritical how people were being when that happened. I was like, oh, people are gonna be like, yeah, no, everybody was like, oh, I get it. I understand why they're acting this way. They feel unheard. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. And I'm like, that's what I've been trying to tell you about all of us and Black people when their people get shot. Like, what are you talking about? You get this? I'm like, we would have been killed on sight, like if we even came near the gates. And so I was just so mad, and I just thought, there's not enough of us. We're all just so exhausted. Like, what can I do? And I reached out to this guy that had asked me to be a mentor for him a couple years before, who was, kind of in the tech world. And I just said, is there a way like I could build an app that is able to sort of moderate comments online or understand what is hurtful and harmful to Indigenous people and correct it. And he was like, ooh, well, he's like, have you talked to Amy, which is the Alberta Machine, or yeah, Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And so, anyway, that's when I learned more about AI. I had heard about AI, but I didn't really know much about it. And so as I started talking to them, basically we were able to build a tool that is able to identify, correct, and inform people when they have misinformation, bias, or racism in their writing about Indigenous people. So it will be free to Indigenous people, so you could actually browse the internet, and I think it works now on all social media platforms except for TikTok. So it would blur anything that's hateful or harmful or misinformed. And then basically you could go over it with your mouse to see if you want to see what it says. And then if you wanted to pay for it, it would actually tell you why it's harmful and misinformed. So we're actually working with TELUS, and they have given us access to their AI sovereign factory. Because one of my issues with AI is once I learn more about AI, it has the perspective of a white, cis, able-bodied, um, private school adolescent boy. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to ask this thing to know what is harmful and to Indigenous people. Like, it's going to be more harmful. So we had to work really hard to undo its bias. And, you know, it's so biased, you don't even see it. Like, it's almost like you should ask it to create an image for you to just see how biased it is. Because the word in when you're reading it, you're not always clear. And so we worked with TELUS to get access to their sovereign AI factory, which is almost OCAP compliant, which is great. And then it's powered 99 by 99% sustainable energy, and it uses 70% less water. So AI is very hard on our land and on our water, and that was another thing that I was like, what am I doing? But at the same time, I thought, okay, if our ancestors had an opportunity to co-develop something like the justice system or the resource extraction companies and how they were going to work, I think they would have taken the opportunity to develop it from the beginning so that it could be done in a sustainable and responsible way. And so that's my hope, is that I don't know, I've just become a really big pain in the side of the government of Canada, because I'm like, you can't do this without us, because you're gonna kill us all essentially. And if we're not involved in helping govern this, we're in big trouble. And so I don't even know if I'm really doing a good job of explaining what we're doing, but we're creating this tool, but we're also creating it from a matriarchal perspective so that it doesn't prioritize colonial knowledge as the only type of knowledge. It will present all types of knowledge, but only the knowledge that we are given consent to share. And so that's the other thing about AI, is we're in a world of post-plagiarism. How it gets its data is super unethical. And so what we've done is we've only used data that we know that is safe to use, that is validated by community We're working with a group of elders, and we're going to ceremony and consistently getting that validation from the ancestors to like, should we do this? Because it is scary. And I think we get a lot of flack for it too, because people are like, oh, you're using AI, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, people are using it for the like, powwow poster. I'm like, well, we're not doing that. Like, we're using it from a very environmentally friendly, the most environmentally friendly way that you can. And we're doing it in a way so that we can change all systems. Because if all industries have access to this tool, they have probably a good chance of helping see it from an Indigenous lens. But then that's our other message is like you can't leave us out. This is to help you as like a good Indigenous intern, but you still got to bring it back to us to validate it. So anyway, that was my big long spiel. Sorry. That's
Very
Wasi.
informative. Thank you so much. And then what's it called again? Sorry.
Wasigan Kisawatsawan.
Okay, awesome. I'll be sure to be in the loop from that.
Yeah, here I can put a little link to it in the chat for you guys. Um, but yeah, we just entered a pilot with TELUS and they're testing it for 6 months. And so far it's going really, really well. I saw on LinkedIn the other day someone posted a link and they were like, it was about the Moose Hide campaign. And they were like, we created this using Wasigan Kisawatsuwin. And I was like, oh, damn, that's crazy. They're already using it to make posts online. But it was cool because it was like done in a way that was respectful to us. And I think that's my main hope is like if the people that are using it are the people that want to do well, they want to help, they want to be an ally. And so let's help them find the tools. Let's help them do a better job. Because people get scared. Oh my goodness. Like some people won't even get started working with us because they're so scared. They're just like, I'm scared to make a mistake. I'm like, bro, you're gonna make lots of those. Let's just get started. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's really, I find it really interesting because like it's probably kind of hard to navigate that space, especially technology and our indigenous ways of knowing and our indigenous ways of like sharing information too. So that's excellent the way you're going about it.
oh, thank you.
Mm. If there's no more questions, I think we can end it there.
Okay.
That was an amazing presentation, Shani. Thank you again. And thank
Oh,
you to our two participants here, Amelia
oh,
and Amy, for joining us today. Be sure to fill out the evaluation that we sent out after the session and stay inspired. Take care. See you, everybody.
bye. Thank you.